as well.
I'm recording already. Cool. Thanks for the reminder. Actually, we kind of forgot about it. Cool. Sorted.
Cool. All right. So because we just started, welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar.
Welcome to the webinar again. Awesome.
Welcome to the webinar. So we're gonna get started with the tips and tricks for the Sculpt-off 2020. So yeah, these are just some photos. Let me show you. This is kind of like at the backstage of the Nomon school. You cannot see. This is Martin. You can see a little bit of him there. Here's Miguel Guerrero. So you probably already seen him or know who he is. James Kane, W. Kane. He's a fantastic sculptor. Daniele Angelot, and I don't know how to pronounce his
Angelozzi. Angelozzi.
He's very particular about how you pronounce it. Angelozzi.
Yeah.
Angelozzi, Dan Moore and Donna. I think this is Jose.
Jose, yeah.
I think he's Jose. This is myself, and
where I am.
Yeah, you're hidden. You're hidden.
Yeah, I can be hidden in all the picture.
Yeah, so, but here you can see a little bit more. So these are some of the contestants or the participants in the Sculpt-off. Here's Marlon. So it was really cool to be able to go inside the, like the behind the scenes a little bit. You used to go, you go to this room where you actually participate, but this area where the photo was taken is kind of like behind that room, and there was like a big screen, and you could see in real time what everyone was doing. So in a way is what is going to be happening this time, right? Like everyone, will have access. So everyone is kind of like in the backstage. Everyone's going to be in the room seeing what's happening. But yeah, so it's the type of chats and chilling that happens before the storm, the calm before the storm. Because
I think at this stage everyone is pretending that it's not nervous, just chit chatting some bullshit, and then by the time you get into the computer, you just focus.
It's completely different. So that's something that I personally, I'm sure you felt the same thing, but I was like super nervous, just because not only it's stressing, like you're competing against the clock and all of that, but we're gonna give you some tips about how to deal with that as well. But for me, it was like, it was my first time in LA, first of all. And I don't know if you noticed, but my accent, my English accent is from Australia. So
we know
it was very well. It's an Australian accent with a very thick South American accent as well. So it's a weird mix, and in American accent is very different. So for example, I remember we were going. I don't know. Remember when we went to the rooftop after?
Yeah.
And I asked for some. First of all, I asked where the lift was, and nobody knew how to tell me that, because lift for me is just the elevator, but in American
doesn't
English
exist,
is like elevator. I don't know how to say it.
Elevator.
Or chips. Like I asked for chips, and I got like a bowl of nachos basically, but chips are just fries. But it was like a challenging thing, and then the biggest thing for me was that I was surrounded by these amazing artists that are incredible in their own field and doing what they do. So it was like quite intimidating. So imagine it could be the same thing right now, right? In the online. I don't know what you reckon.
I think it is, guys. We have some comments here on the chat that pretty much everyone is also kind of feel the pressure. It's a shame that we don't have like the same kind of sense that we are all of us, we can gather into one room. But at the end of the day, it's like 3 hours where you are testing yourself. Here time is money. It's like every single stroke that you do counts. And after the 3 hours, you need to present something. You need to hit the render and then to present something. So yeah, you kind of feel the pressure, but at the same time, it's cool because it's a completely different environment. Normally in the normal environment, you're chill, having fun. And this case, like with all the constraints, the rules, the vibe, all the pro artists around, it's very cool, to be fair. Very cool.
Yeah, definitely. So so that's what I thought what we could share about it. And I mean, when we got into the room, into the Sculpt-off, I remember we had some issues. Some people, like the tablet wasn't working. I remember Marlon Kishot which in this case, in this time, you cannot use keyshot. We're gonna get to that, but Marlon keyshot was giving him some issues and couldn't render or something like that. But even though it is a competition, there is a sense of, friendship and, people like all around him trying to help him. Oh, let's sort this out. Help let's fix the keyshot going, get it going. So it's like really cool, and it's, I guess it's these type of things that Pixologic do. They're kind of like incentives to bring and grow the community and bring them together, which is it's just basically what I love about the the Pixologic guys. It's all about the artists and empower them, right?
So Pablo, we have a question already from iPad. Well, the user is called iPad. It's not like from iPad itself.
Yep.
What are the rules? So let's talk a little bit about this year's Sculpt-off.
All right, so I'm gonna show you guys where it is. I'll put a link into the chat, and then Marlon has probably more knowledge about this than myself, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been reading all the way through, and also chat with Paul and everyone. This year is a little bit different from other years. In this year, everything is inside ZBrush. So even the final render should be inside ZBrush using the BPR or also the NPR. So you have the two options. We will get into that later. Probably we'll give you some hints about how to use it. And also very important is that there are some constraints, especially about IMM brushes. The whole point about the IMM brush is that you cannot use any IMM brush that doesn't come within ZBrush. So here is one of the deals. We believe that you can build it on the spot. So probably Pablo is going to get you through some of the process about how to build your own IMMs. Because to be fair, this type of topic like steampunk, it kind of requires a lot of elements. So definitely creating your IMMs will be part of the process. And other than that, also the materials. So right now, in terms of materials, if I'm not wrong, you only can use the materials that come in ZBrush and also the downloadable materials that you gather online as well. From there, we talk about the standard materials and also the matte caps. And obviously, you can have the chance to create the material during the Sculpt-off, but we probably don't recommend you to do that. But creating in advance. So that's something that we need. This is all about planification. So independently of the concept that you're going to create, there is so much organization that you have to build around it. And other than that, obviously, you need to submit your image. You need to make sure that you're streaming all time, because as far there is the stream, there is a cut or anything, it will be disqualified because you never know. And also make sure that the ZBrush is always on the screen. Also very important, never show your reference on the screen while you're streaming, because no one should know. And also don't put your name anywhere, because it's an anonymous contest. So at the end of the day, the judges will be checking the images, and then they will just take the decision on the image, not on the artist.
Which is the cool part about it as well. Like there's no bias. Like if you know someone or you think, oh, this person is like really good, it will be based purely on the final image.
There is a question from Ian. What happened if ZBrush crashes while the stream?
It happened to me.
Yeah, it happened to me as well. I do believe that because from what happened, since you are recording your monitor, just pretty much just open ZBrush and then just keep sculpting. Everything will be checked later on, because the videos will be online, so the judges can check the videos. If they can analyze a crash, it's just a crash. It's just fine.
Yeah.
Talking about crashes, and here is something very important that I want to talk to you guys. Be obsessed about saving your progress.
Yeah, quick saves all the time.
Quick save, but don't trust ZBrush quick saves, because all of us, we know where it can end up.
Yep.
So save it. Save every 2 minutes. So something that I did in the Sculpt-off, I just took a post-it, put it on the screen, a post-it, and then just put save in capitals. So I laid pretty much, I could see the screen, and I just knew that I had to save. And I pretty much was saving every 5 minutes. So be sure that you're always saving. All right. On top of that,
Emma has a good question. So how do they not know who it is if you're all streaming with camera? So
the camera is not compulsory, by the way.
Hmm.
They will only know because it says there it has no camera is fine. It's about because you will need to upload it in one of the channels through, I guess, through your user in ZBrush Central, which is attached to your name. So if you render an image under your username and put it in the thread or wherever you have to upload it, you can see the stream. So from there you can know who is actually sculpting what. Nevertheless, I can tell you judges, we are not allowed to see the stream. So
Yeah.
we are not we should not supposed to
Or
see
participate.
okay. Or participate, exactly.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, this is fair enough. I mean, there are a few rules, 24 rules. They're pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, they're pretty straightforward. And the main thing, I guess, to keep in mind is that because it is a contest in ZBrush, everything should happen in ZBrush from start to finish. So if you feel unsure about like what to do, obviously read the rules, but just keep that in mind that as long as what you do comes from ZBrush or like from the ZBrush tools that are already in ZBrush, it's a pretty safe place.
Yeah.
What we're planning to do in terms of practical examples today, to get you the creative juices flowing with all of this really cool stuff, because I think, by the way, the theme is fantastic this year, is to show you some tips and tricks to speed up the workflow, to constrain the creation process within those 3 hours, which is pretty hard. I'll show you a pretty simple technique that worked really well for me, as well as in general, creating custom brushes, how to use some of the insert brushes. We're going to take you through that, as well as NPR filters. Marlon has his own sculpture, that right? The one that you used
Yeah.
to in 2017. He'll show you, because that's another thing that we were talking about with Marlon, right? That you basically have to almost model and sculpt the piece for the shot. So don't worry if you're not going to see it in the final render because it's an image. Don't bother sculpting it or doing anything. So we're going to take you through that in just a second in a more kind of like practical example. But yeah, we wanted to go through some of the experience that we had, as well as some of the rules, just to clarify things and see if you guys had any questions. But by all means, go to the Pixology website, check out the rules, and then we'll take it from there. I don't know, Marlon, if you want to talk a little bit more about the theme and
No,
how to
I think
approach
that
it.
no, not really. I mean, theme here is pretty much an artist's choice. Not so much. Um, there is one question about if there is any separation in categories like art surface, props, organics. I do believe there is none. So
Yeah.
last year, actually, what happened is that pretty much everybody was competing just for one belt, pretty much. And I do believe this year is pretty much the same thing. And that's the cool thing.
Okay.
There is so much freedom about it. Be sure that you're just original, and that's it. Nevertheless, obviously, being such a steampunk, I do believe that there will be a dominance in hard surface elements because
I think it's a perfect mix, or it's a perfect balance. You can just
yeah,
combine the two, right?
yeah, just be smart about it and play with it. Yeah, so we can already start talking like giving some few hints about how to
Time
fast the
management and
process.
planning.
For example, time management is a good one. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So so for me, because for me, working fast is not. I'm not a fast sculptor. I like to plan ahead, and I think that's one of the key things. So I'm just going to show you a bit of the planning that I did, and one of the tips that I use, or the tricks that I use to get this Sculpt-off going. So hang on, here we go. So I'm just going to share this. So these are some of the practices that I've done. I'll show you as well in ZBrush some of the practices that I did. I did the full sculpture, if you will, as a practice to time myself and figure out what I could do. And these images that you see here, starting from here, let's actually organize by name. So this that you can see here is a pretty ugly sketch, right, of what I wanted to create, that sort of king for the tarot card. Now you can see that it's pretty rough, but I sort of highlighted the green area as a starting point. So my main focus during the first few minutes after I plan my sketch or my 3D sculpture was to concentrate on setting up the background, right? After that, I move on into making that sort of chair, like the blocking of the chair. Then I moved into the skull, then into these details, which were created with custom brushes that I built during the stream or during the Sculpt-off. Then I went into the kind of like character or the main area or the focal point of the composition, you know, the details of it, these additional assets, yeah, and so on and so forth. And then after I clear kind of like the block out of the areas which are in green, I moved into detail. So I started detailing the chair and making sure that the flow of the details were working fine. Then the background, the details of the character, you know, I think I did some fiber mesh or something like that, and some details for the skirt and the rest of the assets. So as you can see, it was more about planning the different stages of how to approach it, and I could only manage to do this and plan this like this after I did a few practices. So I did that a few times, and I realized, you know what, I'm spending way too much time in just maybe the characters details, and you won't be able to see that as much. So let's refocus and concentrate on bringing the whole thing to the same level of detail, to the same level of yeah, basically the same level of detail, so that they look better. So yeah, that's basically what the planning that I did. And after I was done with this, again, this is thanks to the practice that I did, I built a timer. So this is just a timer for myself. Like I had it next to my references. I'm just gonna play it to show you what it is. It's nothing more than a 3-hour timer, right?
Yeah, this is very cool. Like a very smart from Pablo. I mean, super methodical, super methodical.
Yeah, so it was a lot of like pre-production, and that's what I'm saying. Like I'm not, I do a lot of sculpting, like fast speed sculpting and that sort of thing for sketching and warm-ups before I do, you know, bigger projects. But I'm not a fast sculptor. I like to plan ahead and think about the pre-production, and that's for me is crucial. So all of these kind of like spheres and things that you see here, those are brushes that I had to prepare, that I have to make during the stream or during the Sculpt-off, right? So as you can, I don't know if you can see it there. I'm just going to speed it up a little bit. But see, see that red line coming up here? So I did this in After Effects, by the way. I just created a 3-hour composition. And then I made this red line. So I knew that this red line, when it hit the R, that's the time that I had to stop making resources. So the R set is for resources. And I knew that when I got to this point, that's it. The resources are over. I don't have more time to do any resources. So I'll just show you roughly. So I have about 15 to 16 minutes to create those brushes. So 15 minutes to build the assets that I was gonna use, like insert brushes and this sort of thing that hopefully we have time to show you. But then after that, there is like 1 hour mark in here. So the 1 hour mark is to build the blocking. So you see, it's pretty much showing you or putting the steps that I set up for myself to build them. So I go through all of that. And also like the length of this thumbnail, you see is different, the background than the next bit, right? So I'm just gonna go through this, but obviously we're not gonna sit down for 3 hours looking at a timer. But the first hour mark, which was that little dot here, for me was having almost all the blocking ready. And then I allow myself to do a little bit more blocking on the main character because it was more you know, more important. And then I went into details, and then I hit the second mark or the second hour, and you see the actual timer is not 3 hours. It's only 2 hours and, like, let's say 2 hours and a half. And I created that buffer, right? So I try to create everything within 2 hours and a half, and I have a half an hour buffer to do what Marlon says, like about presentation, about taking what you did and making it look, you know, much better. Plus we had to export things and wait for the render in that case using Keyshot, which in your case, guys, you're not gonna have access to that. So in a way it's gonna be faster, I suppose. But yeah, that's a little bit of
one question from Instagram that I was before. In which area do you struggle the most, or which area you feel the most challenging within the 3 hours?
I would say the blocking. I because I had everything planned, it was a little bit easier, but I always struggle with the blocking because getting the silhouette, the proportions right, the the balance of the volumes first, getting them right for me is the most important things. Anything that comes in terms of detailing, that's super easy to do. And that just doesn't take as long. So
Yeah,
the most
totally.
challenging for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is getting the volumes right, the shapes right, that they communicate what you want, and then adding details. That's what ZBrush is for. Like adding details is super easy.
And did you
So
manage to complete like your the Sculpt-off, like meet all the deadlines that you had, or you had like
um,
a certain delay, or you were
no, I
faster
did I
even?
did got a I did I did got a delay. Uh, for one, because my ZBrush crashed at some point. So I didn't lose much, but I lost a few minutes from that timer. Also, also because the ZBrush, I think my ZBrush crashed. Some of the brushes that I had built, I forgot to save them. I just built them and had them in there. So I lost those brushes. So I lost those initial 15 minutes of the process. So fortunately, I've already used. It happened towards the end, so I already used some of those, and I just needed to remake a couple. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, I reckon I struggled more during the blocking. Not because it was hard to do as a technical thing. It's just more like a personal thing that I like to get those right. So let me just do one more thing, one more tip, and then I'll hand it over to Marlon to give some of the more pro tips. So another thing that I did, I obviously, I'm sure you guys know about Spotify. So I have my Spotify here. I created a playlist in Spotify called the Sculpt-off playlist, and it's 44 songs, but it's roughly 3 hours. So that's something that it really helped me. I just put my my headphones on and I play that music, and it's we can discuss about like what type of music you can put in here and all of that. My preference would be, or what I like to play when I'm kind of in the zone, is electronic, like tango, like that sort of thing, or funky music that is upbeat and keep me motivated, but also in you know doing stuff. But this was really helpful as a tip. So if you prepare and you create a playlist that is just for the Sculpt-off, at least like and if you practice, of course, that when you get in towards the end, so like I knew around, it gets to this point, take me to the river, then I'm pretty close to just finish. So it also gives you an audio cue as to when you need to stop, or when you need to start thinking about, come on, it's time to do the render and get started. But yeah, those are like my two tips. Just prepare. You can build up your timer. Also, a Sculpt-off playlist would be really good. It doesn't have to be with you know Spotify. It's just easier for me. And those are like visual cues and audio cues that you could have to give you a cue. But again, it's going to be pretty. The pressure is going to be high.
I think music here is key. There is one story that Paul told us back then on the stage, and it was very funny. One of the artists in a different year, he just put himself a Disney movie on the. You remember that story,
Yeah,
Pablo?
yeah, yeah.
He put a Disney
And it was
movie
three
because
hours.
he pretty much remember what's the length of the movie. So by the time the story was developing, while on the movie, he knew which
Yeah.
part of the sculpture should be. So it's kind of cute. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think all of these that kind of keep you distracted, and because at the end of the day you need to chill out. Something that I do, I always like I try to snack something. That's very important for me. Snack something, or having a bubble
Hmm.
gum or something that kind of take out the pressure. And be careful with the water. I think that's something that is very important. Because in 3 hours
Yeah.
you cannot go to the toilet. So I literally I remember that I constrained my drinking water that morning in both school tops. So be important about it. I got a question from West here about how much are we allowed to use inside ZBrush. So if you don't mind, Pablo, I can share my screen because I want to
Yeah.
show
Let's do
the
that.
the sculpt that I did in 2017, because I literally use the base mesh that come within ZBrush, and I literally planify it. And that's pretty much, I think, about planification, about trying to make sure that you work as faster and as productive as possible. Oh yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Drinking wine, Emma, is also an option. I just finished my cup, unfortunately. I
Uh,
have.
Yeah, you can share now.
Cool. So I'm going to share this screen. You guys can see now the screen.
Yes.
Cool. So this is the sculpt that I did back in 2017. So I don't know if you guys, if you open the Lightbox, you know that you have a demo head female. Let me just take out this here. So if you open the female, it's going to, whatever. Let me just open the female here. I will open this one later on. You have, no, it's not this one. There is a full body one. I think there should be a full body one somewhere. I think, or either I use the demo soldier. There is one that is called Julie. Maybe it's not anymore in 2020. There was like a
No,
Julie
I think
base
it's
mesh
in the tools. Check the tools.
inside the tools. She's a
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, Julie, there you go. So this is the one
Yeah.
that I use for the Sculpt-off. So I did a planification before getting into the geisha. So one of the things that I knew is that I don't want to start from a sphere and a blockout. And why? Because I know I want to texture it. If I want to texture a base mesh, and if I want to render later on in Keyshot, I need to have UVs in advance. So there is so much work process that I didn't want to do it, and I knew that time here was running. So the first thing that I did when I entered into the Sculpt-off, I literally just delete whatever I didn't need from the sculpt, make sure that everything was within polygroups, and then just literally just let me just higher, hidden here. I think it has layers or something. Yeah, it has layers. Weird. They call. Let me just do again the same thing. Let me just delete this one, delete this, hidden, and then literally straight. The first thing that I did, I just went to my C plugins and did a UV master. On why normally that's something that I will do later on, but just by doing this, activating polygroups, I just literally saved so much time because I knew by the time I finished the sculpt, I can already start poly painting without thinking so much about it. Because believe me, when you need to start rendering and time is running, sometimes you start forgetting even stuff that you don't is supposed to be easy. Something that's simple as literally how I can do the UVs. And then I remember in the second year that I forgot something that it was the most common thing, you know, and then I couldn't find it on the panel. So it's very important
to
that,
me as well.
That you get so nervous and then you start forgetting things that it just doesn't make any sense. Something that I do
I
every
forgot
day.
about a shortcut, a brush shortcut.
A brush shortcut, you start forgetting stuff. So all this technical stuff, ideally, I can sort it from the beginning. And then after that, let me just go ahead and open this project now. And then after that, just to kind of clarify a little bit more, I finalize this girl. Obviously, I pose her, and I do believe, and something that I'm very very picky about is that at the end of the day, what you are presenting is not a sculpt. What you are presenting is actually an illustration.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, you need to create emotions on the viewer. So I remember I have seen sculpts that were amazing, but maybe in terms of like what is what is telling me or what is transmitting, maybe it's not as much as a different one. And for example, in this sculpt that I did in 2017, I did believe that composition wise was probably more appealing because it was not a straight portrait, and also the fact that it was posed, I think is something that probably kind of help in the final decision. So this is something that I really want to encourage you guys. Don't think completely so much about the sculpting. Try to keep it simple, but mostly try to think about the final image, how you want to place the camera. You remember that you can always place your camera, store in the camera, and then whatever stroke you do, you can always come back to the same camera. You can always come back to the same camera just to make sure that everything is in frame.
Yeah.
So
and just
kind of stuff is
sorry,
important.
Marlon,
Sure.
on that note, that what you were saying, guys, you can also, if you're preparing, if you pre-planning ahead, like a sketch or an idea, you can save it as a screenshot or as an image, bring it into ZBrush, and just put it with the spotlight, so you have a reference just to see how you're completing and how you're framing it. So that's really really helpful.
Yeah. So and the last thing is that there is a lot of questions about the rendering, composition. I was talking to Pablo just before about it, and it looks like the best way to go around it is using the PPR filters inside ZBrush. Since it's possible, it looks like a Photoshop, you cannot use it. That's So it's a bit
Yeah, looks
unclear, to
is
be fair.
100% ZBrush. So
ZBrush.
just to be
Just
sure.
a tiny reminder. I don't know if you guys know, but under the render tab here, you have one tab here. Under the render menu here, you have the BPR filter tab. And the cool thing about it is that you have pretty much very similar filter that you have also in Photoshop. So for example, if I want to contrast my render, I can just contrast, and also I can blend the contrast. And then you can just, stack new layers on top. This is something that also you can play in not only in BPR, that is this type of render engine, but also using the NPR version that is more like a comic or style, or like a 2D style, which I think is also quite good. But pretty much is very similar to what you have in Photoshop. So for example, right now, if I want to change the background, that is the common background that comes within ZBrush, what you can do just quickly, you can just literally inside of filter, you will just apply, if I'm not wrong, it's one that is called color.
Paint.
Paint, where is it? There you go, paint. And then you decide which paint you want to use. Make sure that it's full. Make sure that you create a nice, color. And then here you can just mask in. So for example, if I play the mask negative, it will be filling all the space that is on the background of the character. If I play with the mask on the other side, it will be just a stencil, which is not the point, right?
Yeah.
But this is the kind of thing that you can think in ahead, that, and something that I can suggest you is that since you're going to be using filters, you can already start saving those filters in a mood board, for example, like PureRef, so you are aware about which filters eventually you can use or you will be using when you start rendering. Okay. I don't know if you want to add something on this, Pasha?
Yeah, that's actually really smart. Maybe that's something that I would have done, like if I would have thought about it, to actually take screenshots and save like a pure ref board of like the things that I would like to use towards the end, like being materials, being whatever it is. So what Marlon is saying is actually really cool. You can just take screenshots of the settings that you use in your test to put into the board with whatever filters. I'm happy to show you a couple more things about the NPR filters in just a second. Like I said, Marlon is, like Marlon said, is really powerful, and it allows you to create, it's like Photoshop, just compositing all within ZBrush. So that's a really cool stuff. So that glow effect, that's really awesome. There's a couple more questions here. Frank was asking if the C-spheres is not an option. I reckon it is, because it's everything that is within ZBrush. So I'm definitely sure.
Yeah, it's an option. It's just that I personally would recommend use a base mesh in case you're going for a human. Just try to make sure how you can make your work faster. Maybe in whatever console you have, C-sphere is the faster. So yeah, that's definitely possible.
Is there a way to have been? Oh, so
yeah, the PureRef. Yeah, you are allowed to use as many screens as you want. Just make sure that the one that is streaming is the one that is pointing ZBrush. So yes, you can have PureRef, and actually we recommend you to have PureRef, so you can have not only all your references, but also all the steps for your sculpt itself. So you know exactly where you're heading to. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other question is, just wondered that was more advantageous to have a C-sphere or pre-made tool. So with the C-sphere, you have a bunch of, like, if you're gonna use, for example, animals or mannequins, those counts as like some sort of C-spheres that will allow you to start the sculpting process faster. I personally, for the king sculpture that I did a C-sphere armature very quickly, just because I wanted to pose it faster, and then I create an adaptive skin and build that build the whole thing from that. But yeah, it's something that you can definitely look into. I don't think you can have any pre-made stuff like a pre-made armature. You'll have to build it within ZBrush when you start the process. But there are a bunch of pre-made stuff that you can get, like the mannequins, for example.
Cool. There is another question from Ewa. If they can use Spotlight, and they pretty much if they can poly paint using the Spotlight for all this kind of stuff. That's a very good question, because this is pretty much like an alpha. I don't think there is anything on the rules that actually talks about alphas in that sense. You know about it, Pablo?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it, but no, I suppose.
I mean, it doesn't come within ZBrush, this one specifically. I just wonder if
Maybe that's an interesting question to
That's a very
pose to
interesting
the
question.
Mixology guys.
This actually doesn't say about it, but anyway, we do believe that probably the safe way to go around it is literally use whatever comes within ZBrush, or actually
Yep.
comes with ZBrush Central Store. Otherwise,
The only thing I would say, the only thing based on the rules that we've seen, the only thing that you are allowed to prepare in advance apparently are matcaps, because the final render, the final image would be from ZBrush. So you can prepare, you can download matcaps, you can prepare matcaps, and you can import them when you are in the Sculpt-off, and you can use those matcaps. So I think that's another thing that we wanted to talk to you guys about. Maybe some custom materials. I can show you guys how to build a matcap material. It's very, very, very simple. I'll show you two techniques. One where you can actually pre-made those materials or build them before you go into the Sculpt-off, and another way that if you want to take into, if you want to build it during the stream, that's another possibility to do it within ZBrush. So that's something definitely that we can talk about. I don't know, Marlon, if you want to maybe show something about the insert brushes.
Not about the insert brushes specifically. I just want to warn you guys about fiber mesh, and that's something that I already encountered also in my second year. Fire mesh, if your concept that you guys have for the Sculpt-off has fire mesh, watch out with the amount of fibers that you have, because it can make ZBrush crash. And I didn't notice back in the time, but it can be very tricky. So if you are planning to use fiber mesh and it's a lot, start thinking that maybe the best way to go around it is maybe just playing with alphas, or maybe just create an MM brush for the the hair strands and kind of stuff. So just watch out with fiber mesh, because it can be very tricky. We want to make sure that you have 3 hours of not crashing session. That's the most important.
Yep. That sounds good. How about, I was just looking at the board reference, and one of the things that I noticed about the theme itself is there's a lot of, obviously the steampunk is, mechanical and all of that, and I'll show you some of the things that come with ZBrush. But I was just going to ask Marlon, could you show like maybe what would you do, or how you go about creating some sort of like mask? Because I see a lot of masks in the theme, like to create kind of like an extraction brush. Because again, that's another thing that I notice in the rules, like you will have to build all of those assets for your for yourself and for your character.
You're asking for masks?
No, like literally like a mask, like that you would wear, like the plague doctor or something like that. Because I was planning to show that, but I wonder like how would you approach it and see if it is similar
how to create like this kind of mask, you mean?
That's right.
I will use probably the classic approach, that is just literally making an extraction from that mask.
Yeah.
And then normally the process that I do for doing this kind of stuff is literally just create a quick extraction. Pretty much what I think everybody does. I never use thickness. I always apply thickness 0, and the reason why is because I want to make sure that that extraction eventually I'm able to see remeasure. So also I want to make sure that I have my symmetry activated, so the see remeasure is actually the new topology is symmetrical. So I would just go ahead to geometry, see remesh, and then just literally I would try to hit a very low number, like a 0.5 or something like that, and then I will have the normal mask. And then on top of this, something that I can recommend you is to make sure that you have a proper loop here. So I will go here on the edge loop, and it will just add another loop here. So I will just go here. I will make sure that there is no polish here, and then set my loops to 1. Click one group loop, and this will allow me to don't lose so much, while I do the new subdivision, that is going to lose the shape. And finally just doing a panel looping, just to make sure that it has a proper shape. So I will just disable polishing, disable beveling, make sure that my elevation probably is negative here, or actually positive. You should go a different direction. Maybe just even just one loop here. Ignore groups, because otherwise you will get like 2 different meshes here, because it's different polygroups. And then just panel loops. Make sure that you get it to the right place, and then you have something like this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Which
Yeah.
you have a different approach for this, Pablo, or?
No, that's what I wanted to double check, because that's exactly similar. I mean, I don't use the panel loops as much, but I would do the same thing. I would get it to a point that is clean. I have the loop around it, and
Yeah.
then I would use the probably the Z modeler just to extrude it manually.
Yeah.
But it is, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, really. So I just wanted to show that, because I noticed there's a lot of the steampunk that has that sort of thing, and you can just build on top of that mask.
So something that I recommend you that I normally do quite a lot to clean the shapes. So I don't know if you guys notice that the shape is very irregular. So normally I don't want to be now, like tweaking all these shapes like manually. So normally what I do, I just literally do one subdivision, delete again the new subdivision level. Sorry, what I will do is first I will make sure that it's as small poly count as possible. And then I will do one subdivision here. And then I will delete the subdivision level, and now my geometry is cleaner. If it's not clean enough, I even will subdivide back again. And then by the time I do
Right.
the panel looping, the cool thing is that this thing is already quite polished. So it's not as messy as it was before. That's
Sweet.
just,
Yeah.
to fasten the process, yeah.
Awesome.
We
Yeah,
have a
that's a
question
great
from,
tip there, guys.
we have a question from West. If you need to start with a clean install, no, I do believe that you can work from your ZBrush with your own UI and everything, right, Pablo?
Yeah, I think so. You can use your UI. The only thing that you cannot use are custom. You can use custom macros, but you cannot use custom macros that build geometry or modify the geometry.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
like if you have a macro to set the color of your, or select a bunch of brushes, I don't know, depending on the macros that you have. But there are macros that will edit the mesh or create new mesh. So for instance, I have a macro that when you press it, it does basically what Marlon is doing manually. It just does it a bit automatically. It's not as clean, obviously. I just use it when I'm sketching, but that one will actually create geometry, right? It's going to extract that and create geometry. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely keep that in
Cool.
mind. I see another question. So we're allowed to download matcaps, Pablo and ZBrush. Yeah, so you're allowed to download all the matcaps that you want from the ZBrush Guides website, from the ZBrush Central. They have like a repository, and there's a link as well where you can download those. And I'm actually going to show you just a bit how to create your own matcaps.
Feel free to. I can stop sharing. So because the second time we had the matcaps question. So feel free to go around it. You want to share your screen, Pablo?
Yeah, of course. Give me one second.
So how Francisco is asking how will you do simple steampunk ornaments? I think here's when we come from IMMs. I don't know if you notice inside ZBrush you have one IMM that is actually gears.
That one is perfect for it.
And I think this one is just perfect for it, exactly. So I will use it. So inside of the stroke panel, inside of like the classic brush options, you have ways to modify this type of IMM. Can I share my screen quickly, Pablo?
Yeah, go for it. I'm just trying to set this up so I can show everyone.
If you open the brush palette, you have here all the brushes. If I press I will get all the IMMs. Just quickly and then you have one that is called steam gears. Actually, it's funny because that's probably the reason why they use the steampunk.
Yeah.
This one that is called steam gears, and you have all these gears that comes within ZBrush. And
It's
the cool thing about
it.
it's literally perfect. So you can literally get crazy just building anything you want. And from here, if you want to, because I do believe sometimes, you need to save time. So something that you can do is literally even create a stroke out of it. So if I just go ahead under stroke and activate it, now I have the option of getting like multiple gears. And not even that. I mean, you can even play with how the stroke even works. So if you can even play with the curve steps. I do believe maybe in this one it's not going to be that so well, but maybe it can help to create a little bit more of like shapes around it, and maybe later on you can start if I go here, I'm going to leave the curve. I'm going to make sure that this is in a different subtool, and then here I'm just going to maybe do an auto group. And now what I'm going to do is make sure that I just mask by group, and then you can just start moving the gears separately, and then you have like some very cool shapes of machinery going on here. So yeah, I think here the best way is just, to use whatever comes already within ZBrush.
Yeah, absolutely. So I reckon that's that would be the smart move, to think about not just rely 100% on the gears or the IMM brushes that come with ZBrush, but really think about whether or not you need them, right? Because
Yeah.
if you don't need them, I wouldn't recommend to just add gears for the sake of adding, just because
Yeah.
again, it's really simple. Like Marlon showed you, it's really easy to do. It's just about knowing where to place them and knowing that if you place them, that they're kind of like intentional, like that you're adding details intentionally rather than just for the sake of detailing stuff.
Yeah, I think as Pablo said before while he was talking, at the end of the day, detailing is not such a big deal. The most important is that it's eye-catchy, and I think what it makes something a good work at the end of the day, just literally the idea and the volumes and how everything plays within the image.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
You,
detailing is not such a big deal here. Yeah.
I would say treat your if you're doing a character or whatever you're doing, a weapon, whatever, treat it as a composition. So they have to be parts that will guide the eye and that sort of thing.
Okay, we have one question from Stan. Feel free to start sharing your screen. I'm going to stop sharing now. Stan is asking, is there is any restriction within the steampunk theme? So say that there are elements of steampunk, but the composition isn't based around it, trying not to give away too much. So I personally do believe that, I mean, the most important is that it's steampunk related. I mean, probably you can have something like a organic steampunk, that so it could be something that is involving some nature ornaments. Like it could be. It
Like
doesn't, for
here or
me,
something.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't really matter me while it's actually steam. So steam, I think, from my point of view, is something that is involves like machinery, years, like all these, old America, like industrial age, it should involve at least a little bit of that, because otherwise it's not so much related.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to put it, in my opinion, would be to, whatever you create is something that would fit within this world that they're trying to create as the theme. It doesn't have to be specific, but I would say two materials that are quite important to recreate this idea would be leather and like metal. Those are like
Yeah.
two things that I see all the time in these type of things. And also, like Marlon said, like trying to make it within this era of this industrial revolution in a way. So you have like the top hat, those sort of things, like vest and
Yeah. Says
that
here
sort of thing.
West
But
Victorian age and industrial
Victorian age,
age.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
lots of masks and goggles, and it's a little bit as I don't know. It's a different type of theme from the Mad Max, right? Like it's a very different theme, but
Yeah, I think
there's
so.
like
Yeah.
similarities of like people trying to create stuff like themselves, or building things that match. But yeah, I would say it's just a matter of focusing on something that would feel part of the world. So I guess what I would do is just show you how to create your own matcaps again, so that you can prepare for like the type of materials that you want to use, and that would save you a lot of time. So there are two ways that I would advise to create matcaps. The first one would be, if you have time to prepare beforehand, is just to collect references, and you can do it with Pinterest, like using this board from Pixologic. Select the materials that you want and then jump into Photoshop. So I'll jump into Photoshop now. And you don't have to use Photoshop. You can use Affinity. Have you used Affinity, Marlon?
No, not really.
I've
No.
used it a couple of times. It's actually pretty good. It's an alternative to Photoshop that you don't have to pay a subscription. It's just a one-time payment. Otherwise, you can do this same thing in, what's the name? The free one, in GIMP or Krita. So yeah, there's not limited to Photoshop. Krita is pretty good. So what I would do is start with a background that is a standard gray, or like a generic gray. So I'll go to the color and set in the RGB tab. I will set this to 128, 128, and 128. That's going to give me a pretty standard mid gray that I can fill the background with. I would create in Photoshop a ellipse of holding shift to constrain it. And let's just change the border, make it it doesn't matter. It could be any color that you want. So I'm gonna make sure that this fits perfectly in that square, right? And this is gonna be your matcap, right? And the whole idea is that you can light up the scene or light up the material, create a material based on this sphere. So if you have a sphere in ZBrush, just imagine how the light would affect the material. So right now it is a flat material, just a red, red sphere. So I have a few of these images here. Let's say that I wanna recreate something like this dirty metal copper or well, kind of like a metallic thing, or a more shiny one. Let's do something like this, right? So I'm gonna start with a base color. So I'm gonna double click this ellipse and just select something like this, right? And then I'm gonna start creating new layers. I'm gonna put all of these references within a folder. Move this one out of the way. All right, and then I have just these layers on top. So I can start with a gradient tool, right? And whatever color I choose to fill this, this sphere. So for example, here at the bottom, this reflection is slightly bit lighter. I can just go ahead and do this, and I get this gradient. And to make sure that it's part of this sphere, which is the matcap, I'm gonna hold the Alt key and clip it, right? So holding the Alt key in between two layers is just gonna clip whatever you do on top of that. And I can just do the same thing, just keep adding layers, clipping them. So for example, this highlight here from the top, maybe not the highlight, something like that, coming from this angle, somewhere from here. And I start building kind of like the outer edges in a way. And I'm gonna do another layer. I'm gonna switch from.
You're trying to get the Fresnel effect already on the matchup?
Yeah, so it just adding the colors of the volumes really. So for example, I'm just like using the Alt key to sample from here. And just keep in mind that with materials, what you see, with metal materials, what you see sometimes and most of the times is just the reflection of the environment. So if you have like a studio photo of a metal, what you will see is just probably the couple of lamps and that's it. So you try to recreate something like that. This is just the radial, right? The radial tool, just to add some color. And I'm just building the base, just holding the Alt key to sample this. The original layers that I created is just to add some variation, but this is just a starting point, right? Then I can go ahead and do another layer, and let's select a color like this and make it a bit darker. Like imagine that the floor is darker, like, you know, the ground. Maybe set it to multiply. So this is just like Photoshop techniques of building with gradients a sphere, really. That's all you're doing, a sphere that would have that material. And then you can go ahead and get into the more like nitty gritty of building a material that it looks like metal, so more specular. Right now, this is very rough. So we can select something like this color, make it a bit lighter, and do something like this. So we have that highlight, and we can hold Control and T to transform, right click and warp, right? So I'm going a little bit fast here, but you can do this type of things to build these, you know, these highlights very easily, right? And you can do the same thing for a darker area. So for instance, I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to change the color to be just a darker, something like that, and move it around to the other side. Right, and then you can obviously play with blending modes and all of that. So that's totally up to you. Opacity is just having a reference of a metal object and then building the same object, the same material that fits within a sphere. And then just to wrap up the setup, I do another layer, for example, and you can take a very soft brush, like this one, and then you can just add highlight. And what Marlon was saying about the Fresnel effect, which, you know, in a metallic object, at the glazing angles, at the 90-degree angles here, it will be 100% reflective. In fact, most of the surfaces, regardless of the roughness, are very reflective towards the glazing angles. So yeah, something like this, maybe introducing, a bit more of a bright yellow. And that's another key important thing about the if you're building these metallic materials for your Sculpt-off, metals are probably the few materials that actually the reflection is a colored reflection that is not depending on the source of the light. So in most materials, if you have like a plastic, for example, that it is reflective, or like a porcelain, obviously if you have a beam of light that has a red color as a source, the reflection will be red, right? But in a metallic object, the reflection is actually colored as part of the metallic. So let's say that I'm happy with this. It kind of looks like a, you know, gold type of material. I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and I'm gonna save that as either a JPEG, PNG is the same. I'm gonna call it metal, and I'll show you how to set up in ZBrush very quickly. Actually, before I jump into ZBrush, you can actually use this as a base and create a bunch of different metals, but I'll show you that in ZBrush. You can do this here by just maybe doing more of a copper material like that, right? So you can totally do this. I'm gonna set this into, yep. So you can totally do this, save this as another image, but I'll show you how to do it in ZBrush in just a second. So metal 2, and you can build an entire library of these matcaps that are allowed to be used during the Sculpt-off. So let me just jump into ZBrush, and I have a sphere here. I'm gonna subdivide, and I'm gonna jump into the material palette, right? So to build a material, you just need to select a matcap that you don't use. In my case, I would use the matcap, the red wax, because I hate that material. So I don't care like overriding this, but you can use any other matcap. So let's just select the matcap, the wax material, and let's go ahead and expand the modifiers. And within the modifiers of any matcap or material, if you go down to the bottom, as you can see, this one is driven by an image. And this one is in particular is using two images, but don't worry too much about that. Just click on this and you can import. Let's go ahead and do the import of the image that I created, the metal. And that's it. That's as easy as it gets. As you can see, is pretty much the same thing, right? It is mapping that is the exact same shape of the sphere into a sphere in ZBrush. The difference now is that, you know, we can modify this sphere, you know, pull it about, and we're literally just melting that metal. But the specularity and all of the shapes, you see the specular here at the top, the slightly redness thing that we added here at the bottom in Photoshop, it's represented in all of these areas. So now this is just a metal material, and you can do, you can combine this with other attributes in ZBrush. So let's just add a couple of gears. I'm gonna delete lower. Marlon already showed you that, which is pretty cool. So let's go to.
The only thing about matcaps that just for you guys to be aware of is that it's not light dependent. So if you are planning to start playing with the light, and you are using basic materials which are going to be interacting with the light, the matcap is going to always stay the same. So that's something just to be aware of.
That's super important actually. So one thing you can do is, if you're going to plan the scene and you have like a composition, let's say what Marlon showed you with the geisha, you sort of know where the light is coming from. So you can paint the highlights in the sphere to come from this angle. So if you look at this sphere, the key light is coming from the top here, and there's like a slightly, other lights on the top, on the right and left hand side. So I'm just gonna use these to add a couple of objects.
The steampunk ball.
The steampunk ball. You should spend a bit more time on this, but this is very random.
Just submit it. I mean, let's see what happens. Maybe you get this year.
Let's see what it takes us. There we go. It's a whole character, a floating thing. All right, so I'm gonna clear that mask, and I'm just gonna split this. Mesh is probably hidden, yeah. sorry, split hidden, not mask.
So Elena is asking if we can pre-make the matcaps in advance, or we have to make the matcaps while the sculpt off.
No, you can pre-made them. You can. That's what I'm showing you. You can make them before you get into the Sculpt-off. You can do them while you're doing the sculpture, but yeah, you can pre-made them, and that's what I'm saying. You can also download some of the ones that are ready.
Sorry, Stan is saying we're making a Pokemon.
There we go. It's a Steam Pokemon.
I think it's Geodude. The steampunk
Yeah.
Geodude.
But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Like you could, like let's let me show you some of the tests that I did with for my Sculpt-off. So these are some of the tests, the way that I planned the thing, and I'm using that matcap that I created. All right, so those are tests, and something that Marlon mentioned before, which is very important, is to focus. Look at this. Look at I mean, the only thing that I sort of worked on, and it's not even that well worked on, is the details here on the top or in the front. Like, look at the legs. You won't see the legs because it's covered by the skirt. So I just made a reference of the length maybe, and at the back is just, I didn't even bother to correct the C-sphere, the curvature, because you won't see any of that. So it's just focusing on those areas to make sure that that you speed up the process. Same thing with the with the head. I started with a Dynamesh object, and I only focus on the front and doing these areas again because it's the only part that you would see. So yeah. So going back to the matcap thing, you can definitely, let's just go ahead and bring in, which one did you use? Julie, was it? Or was a project?
Julie was in tools, or which one are you looking for?
Oh, I guess it could be this one, so that you can assign the different matcaps, right? So let's say that you're happy with this matcap, or let's just give this guy a normal kind of like this stone, this fill object, right? And then you do you follow the technique that Marlon showed you about the masking to create a mask. All right, something like that, and we'll do something similar to what Marlon did. I'm gonna follow his tips.
Tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks. Perfect. Look at this. This one is really nice and clean.
Well, but I like it. It has style. I mean, it's not just the classic mask. I mean,
there we go. See, this is what we're looking for. This is
exactly. We're looking for originality.
Exactly. Look at this.
Sometimes the beauty is on the error.
If you get something like this actually is not too bad. I mean, you can use something like the polish by groups. It's just gonna polish things.
So one question from Francisco Pablo: it's possible to do a matcap with a metal look and edge wear? I don't think so. Edge wear, no.
Yes, there is a trick. There's a trick for it. I'll show you.
Oh, nice.
There's a trick to do that. There are two ways to go about it. Maybe you already showed the mask, so there's no point of showing you. Maybe let's do something else that's more. Plus, you did a better job anyway. So if I have a sphere like this, there are two ways to go about it. One is to paint with material, and another one is relying on the NPR filters, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think NPR can. Yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna do. Yeah. I have 500,000 polygons in here. I'm gonna select my matcap. Right. So this is my original metal. I'm gonna fill the object with material. So the M fill object. So now I can switch to any other material that I want. So what I'll do is go to, and remember, this is, you can, yeah, this is almost like just for an illustration. So you can do a lot of things that you would normally won't do in a more, if you're doing a mesh for production or something else, or for printing. So you can do like a sphere within a sphere and have different materials and then just blend them. But I'll show you the simple way. So you can take, I'm gonna select another, I don't know, maybe this one as a way to create those scratches. So I'm gonna select the damp standard brush. This is the one that you can get these very sharp lines. And what I'll do is I will add the material to it. So now whenever I affect and create the scratches, I'm also gonna be painting the material that I have selected, which is this shiny material. So I can just go ahead and do things like this. Maybe this material is too shiny. Let's go for a darker one like this. Right, so this will be my scratches. So I'm just adding these scratches with the sculpting. So I'm affecting the volume, but at the same time, I'm adding material. Now you see the kind of like the polygons around because of the amount of geometry that I have. So if I want a cleaner set of scratches, I would just need to add more resolution. So let's go for 2 million around here. So I get a better result. So let's do these scratches, this edge wear. If you had something that is not a sphere, you could just mask by cavity, and then you can apply the same effect. So for instance, let's go to the head of this guy, fill object as with material, yes, and then let's go to the mask by cavity in the masking options, mask by cavity. Not sure if this is masking anything really. Oh, intensity. There we go. Right, so I'm masking by intensity. So there's a mask. Hopefully you guys can see it. And I'm gonna invert that mask. And I'm gonna fill object with material. And I'm gonna clear that mask. All right, so you see, I just get, oh, actually it should have been the other way around, right? Let's fill object. Yeah, something like this. So you can definitely have two materials. Now, the trick here, obviously this doesn't look as good. You can see very clearly the distinction between one material and the next. So the trick comes at the render time, not with the NPRs or anything, but when you go to the render palette, where are we? Render palette here. There is a tool. So I'm gonna do hang on, not that one. Render properties and render path. So I'm gonna do a BPR just to show you what this does. So you still see the very well-defined polygons, because ultimately when you're painting with material, you're painting the vertex of the geometry that you have. So what you can do, there is this thing here called material blend radius under the blended properties. So if you set this to, let's say, a blend radius of 8, for example, ZBrush is going to apply a blur between the two materials that you added, or any material that you add. So you have to do another BPR, and you see it just softened those transitions. So maybe that was too much. Let's do 3.
Yeah, it's a very nice trick. Very, very nice trick.
Maybe 4. Yeah, it's really useful because not a lot of people know about this thing, that it's in ZBrush, and it's been there for ages. So you can blend this material, but the usual thing that is kind of like hard to get nice results is just a render time. So let me go back to the sphere. Hopefully this would show it a bit better here. Let's do a render. So you see you get a softer, nicer result. It's just a matter of sculpting it. The other alternative that you have is to do it with mixing those NPR filters that Marlon showed you guys before. So let's say if I go to this creature, let's do a render of the head here. NPR, maybe closer.
Francisco is asking if the material blend is a global value.
Yes, yes. So it is a render value. So whatever you have in the render, it would apply to any render that you do, whatever tool you do. So let's just set it back to 1. You see, if we do the render, it goes back to normal. So what I'll do is I'm just going to apply a normal material to it, or a standard one. and I'm gonna do a PPR render. And then I'm gonna go to the filters, right? So this is the other alternative you have to play around with that. So the first one, I'm gonna enable that, and I'm gonna go to a filter that is one of my favorites. It's called the material shading, right? So the material shading, it basically allows you to choose any material that you want and apply it after you do the render. So you don't have to wait for another render. So you can click on this material, on this thumbnail, select it. So I'm gonna choose this one right here, the metallic one. Obviously at the time is at 50%, so I'm gonna set it to 100. So this is not, I mean, the material of the creature is not applied to it. So you can sculpt with your favorite material, and when you do the render, you apply this filter. So it's just at a render time that gets applied.
That's cool.
And the second one that I would do is another material, another material shading, and I choose a different one just to, I don't remember the name of the person who asked about this, but hopefully this gives you some ideas. So I'll take something, let's go for this droplet, right? And again, flat shading. So now I have these two materials in two different filters. I don't have to re-render anything. They just kind of like layer like a stack of different materials. And I would take this one and I would go to the blending modes here, and I will start playing with the cavity. So it's kind of like adding just to the cavity. You see, with the exponent, maybe negative values. No, I think positive values is fine. So it's just a matter of playing with these values. Obviously the cavity intensity, this will determine the intensity, and the exponent will just sharpen things up. Just to give you an idea, guys, anything on the left-hand side of this panel is just to control the application of the filter based on the render. So like Marlon showed you, you can use the mask in here, and that is because you have by default render a mask, right? Same thing with the shadow or ambient occlusion. At the moment, I didn't render any ambient occlusion. So if I go to the AO here, and it's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna affect any render because ZBrush doesn't know what map to use as a reference. But with the cavity, it's just gonna use the actual volume of the object. So again, the cavity, I'll set it to 1. On the right-hand side, anything on the right-hand side is to exaggerate or contrast the settings on the left-hand side. So yeah, you can just push this up here, change the radius. So this is what I would do to sort of like create that effect. And of course, this is just one thing, one effect that you can do. Oops, let's go 1. And you can do another one, right? You can do another filter, set it to material shading, and then maybe add I don't know, a different material, another matcap, this gold one, right? And you can blend it in a completely different way. So we can set it to, let's say, lighten or screen, and then we can control it based on the Fresnel effect. So this matcap is going to be applied around the edges a little bit. So there's a lot of ways to control it. I would recommend definitely in the Very 2 days that you have left before the Sculpt-off to play around with this as much as you can. But as you can see, just using Photoshop, it's really easy to build things up like that.
I was just thinking about it today, that they only have like few days just to practice about it.
There's not much practice.
It's not so much. I mean, it's so challenging, eh? Can I use Photoshop to crop the final image for the Sculpt-off? Zach is asking, just for cropping purposes.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
You can crop that. You can crop directly in ZBrush.
With the when you render, when you export it,
Let's see. So when you export, you can do this, right? You can use the document export, and then you can crop the way you want. I don't think you can use it, but I would definitely say that the best way to go about it is what Marlon suggested at the beginning of setting up your document and setting up a camera. And so you can work always like based on that camera, because like I said, it's about sculpting what is going to be presented.
I think the planification here is key, because while you are in the Sculpt-off, there is not so much space for improvisation. So I definitely don't suggest you like imagine that you have like a very good idea, well, what the Sculpt-off. I probably don't suggest you just go for it, because you don't want to try something that you haven't tried before. So what I will do is just like, if you have your camera, you have your idea, just do it all the way straight. So you can avoid having any possible accident. Definitely.
Yep. So just remember, guys, that the part of the rules is to have that either the height or the width to be 1,500 pixels.
Yeah, set the document in advance. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is roughly what Marlon was saying. So you can just set up the document, find like the angle that you want for just to get started, like that. Hang on. And then save a camera. Just go to document. You can set this as a front camera, or you can save the camera. Like now, maybe I should use that. So store camera, call it render. Do you still use this, by the way? Like the sublink?
Not at all. No, because if you want to jump between softwares, you want to make sure that perspective actually makes sense. So those cameras are using, I'm supposed to use the right perspective, though I'm telling you, it's not so perfect.
No. Yeah, that's right.
But at least it's something, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is definitely the easiest way to go about it. You can just, sculpt whatever you want, and then just go back to your render camera or your close-up and see how everything is working. So like Marlon said, it's ideal to save the camera as a reference, and yeah, saving all the time and saving the project as well, so that if you make materials within ZBrush and you make brushes like the insert brushes, or you make the cameras, it will be saved with the project and you won't lose any of that.
It looks here, Pablo, that all the crowd are apt to create steampunk Pokemons.
Pokemon.
So it's like we're going to have a whole Pokemon submission on Saturday.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna submit this guy.
Yeah, dude. Dude.
This steampunk Pokemon
for the season 13. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It can be very useful. You guys have any other questions? I think we pretty much have covered
yeah.
So do you want us to talk about anything? Like, feel free to unmute yourself, or just literally just type on the chat. Anything for us, guys?
Just reading the chat.
I think people still talk about
what criteria will you be using for your decision? Oh, that's a question for you, the judge.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in my case, I'm so much about originality, so I'm going to value not so much the sculpt, but how cool it's actually the final picture. Yeah, I think mostly on that. So I personally don't think that ornamentation or anything it's such a big deal. Meanwhile, obviously it should be steampunk, and also how original it is, how I catch it. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, really difficult to say. Emma is asking if the public is going to be if the voting is going to be public.
I don't know. Like I think there might be like a public. No, actually, I don't know. I'm just like making up things.
Yeah, it doesn't say nothing. On the previous year, it was, and I do believe it should be the same. But to be fair, we don't know.
I think the public last time when we did it, the public chose the candidates, and then the judges will judge based on that. So because there's a lot of entries.
Yeah, we have one question from Ewa. It's about how to create a fog inside ZBrush.
The what? Sorry.
The fog. So for the steampunk, yeah, you know, this kind of stuff. I mean, I have some idea about using material transparency. And just, you know, like
is it just like mist? Like
yeah, I think yeah, it's like mist, but you know, it's like create fog, steam. It's more like steam, you know. Create fog, steam, and this kind of stuff.
I would recommend two things. One is it would be using the transparency in ZBrush. So let's say if I want to do some steam from this guy, I would append a plane. Let's say it's coming out of his head. right? Subdivide that plane a few times, fill it with a black color. Oh, sorry, not that material. With a black color, and then just use the, I don't know, the standard brush to paint the smoke. So with a white color, I'll just go around and do this.
Yeah,
It's not gonna be
guys.
perfect.
Like, watch this. It's pretty much going to answer. Yeah, very good.
It won't be perfect, but it will give you a starting point.
Yeah.
So this is a soft brush, right? Just a soft brush in. Okay, maybe I should have done it with the Pokemon. It will make it more interesting, but
just put it there. I mean, it's just there in the subtools. Just append it. Come on.
Yeah.
By the way,
put it in the Pokemon.
Wes is saying that there is a fog in the render menu. Yeah, there is a fog, but it's not literally. It's not the same. It's just like some type of mist to create some depth illusion. I think what you guys are requesting is literally where you can control how the steam goes or this kind of stuff. So
I'm just gonna try to place this like around one of the things of the Pokemon coming out of this thing. Right, so once you have this ready, what you can do is you will need to create a texture for it. So let's go to C plugin. Let's go to the lowest subdivision level. Go to C plugin, UV master. Let's do a quick unwrap of that. Done. Like I didn't like with the standard settings. Don't worry much about the technicality. Just created a simple plane. Do a UV using the C plugin. Just with these settings, unwrap the high subdivision level so that you can actually paint it. Then go to the texture palette, texture map, was it? Yeah, texture map, and do create. And then you can click create from polypaint. So the series is gonna grab whatever we did with the polypaint into a map, and then you can use this anti-alias with the transparency. So you can just do this and get that going. And do the render. Of course, you have to assign, remove those NPR filters that I just added. So that's one way to do it. And what's good about this example is that you can use the move brush, right? Because this is geometry ultimately, right? And you can just add a few, move it around.
Yeah, this is actually quite cool.
It will be stylized. It's not going to look exactly like I said. And you can control the amount of transparency. By the way, what ZBrush does is it will take whatever is black as the color black, and you will interpret it as transparent. So that's why it sort of works. But it gives you an idea. What Marlon said as well about transparency, but it's a little bit more tricky. Yes.
Yeah, let me try. Let me share my screen. I'm just thinking about different way to go around it. So let me just share quickly my screen. I was supposed to show this, but you know what? I think it's more interesting if we talk about the transparency.
If you want, I can send you my Pokemon.
Yeah, please go for it. Now I have this project open, so let me just create new project, new document. I don't want to be in NPR. Okay, so let me just create another geodude, just to make sure that we stay within the within the concept.
Another Pokemon.
Yeah, another Pokemon.
Do the evolution of mine.
The evolution. Let me just go for. Yeah, it's more like with bottoms, just to make it more classic.
And let me give an announcement, something that we've been preparing with Marlon for a long time. This is going to be an announcement. If you don't win the Sculpt-off, don't worry. We will send you the Pokemon. That's going to be the prize, the consolation prize.
Yeah, we're going to 3D print it for you. Okay, so this is going to be where you do get the stream. So what I was thinking, it was something slightly different. So I will just append a sphere here, a new sphere. So the guy is going to get a whole bunch of, smoke from here. So what I will do, I will just literally put it here, and then I will probably just make several duplicates here to create volume.
Right, yeah. I see where you're going.
I'm still trying to figure out if it's going to work or not. Let's see if it's going to get somewhere. And now I will just go ahead and just give a little bit better shape. And now let me just go ahead and dynamesh this. So if I go to geometry, I will just go here, dynamesh, something like this. I'm going to something like this. So right now, if I render, it's going to be obviously a solid piece, right? But if I go ahead, I'm going to apply, for example, this reflected plastic just to this one, and then I'm going to apply for this one a different material. Just apply, just to make sure that there are two different materials. I have a weird setting happening here. I have I think one of the filters. Well, whatever.
Yeah, drop shadow, or the glow. You had the glow
Yeah,
from the
I
previous
have.
one, I think.
Yeah, I have all of these on. Let me just disable all the filters. Let me just make a quick render. Okay, this makes more sense. So now I want to make sure that this guy is transparent. Well, this guy, the smoke is coming out transparent. So what I will do, I will go to the material here. The material is here, make sure that it's here. And the first thing that you need to do is to make sure that here under display properties and the BPR settings, you activate the BPR transparency shading. So this is going to tell you that this is a render property. So it's only going to happen in while the render. So right now, not so much happens, but if you turn down the BPR visibility, what it should happen is that the guy should be slightly more transparent. So by doing this, you can also get the smoke effect, but also will kind of help you to also cast some of the shadows and maybe do something slightly also more interesting. So here you can literally play even more with it, and every time you hit render, the whole thing is going to be slightly transparent. So yeah, it could be another way to go around it, just building geometry and just make sure that you have this activated, and then you can play how much transparent can be. Yeah.
And you can potentially also like have more than one subtool intersecting with each other to create more. Like
it could be, but I have the feeling that it's going to do double layering, so it's going to show the walls.
Right.
So since it's going to show the walls, I think it's going to screw up the
view. Yeah.
The view. Let me just try. Let me try that one. I'm curious. I think it's not going to happen. 1 second. Shift R. Oh yeah, it's actually not. Yeah, it's even better. You can literally create a whole bunch of different shapes
Multiple
all
ones,
around. Yeah, and then you can just get crazy about it. Awesome.
Yeah, I suppose just to have more control about the.
And you have more control. And here, literally, what you can do is just get to the clay brush. That's what I will do, and then we'll just start getting just crazy here, just to make sure that you have like a proper, like a dirt shape, or even in the surface here, you can go ahead and apply a super big noise scale,
Yep.
to make sure that you literally break the whole surface. And then just, apply to the mesh. It's going to help more, by the time you hit render, the whole thing is even looking slightly better. So yeah, I think this can be another solution. Just make sure you have this setting activated.
Definitely. That's going to be really cool as well to, combine it maybe as well with with a bit of painting and a bit of color. So
yeah,
just to variate things a bit.
Agree. Yeah.
I have another trick that I could show you in terms of like, not necessarily the steam coming out of like certain areas, but more about the mist, like at the render time, just to get a bit of that mist or that fog
Cool.
to hide or to put the character within that mist.
Sure. Go ahead and showcase it, Pablo. Let me just stop sharing quickly.
Because the other thing that I thought you could do as well with the steam could be using nanomesh.
Using nanomesh in which sense?
Let me just give you an example. So
yeah, explain us.
No, I mean it's basically what you did, but it's just having control with the with nanomesh. So yeah, this thing here, as you can see, this is just a render from this Pokemon. If I render this out, you see that it's sort of like fading.
Can you share your screen? Sorry, Paulo. Just to be sure.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to click share. Share.
We're seeing your face.
Yeah. Well, that's actually quite nice. So this is what you see here. Basically, is the Pokemon, the creature thing, is fading into the background, like in the mist, and that's creating that sort of depth of field, just to add more atmospheric or more atmosphere to the render. So that's another NPR filter. It's super easy to do. It's very cheap, so you can just do that, and then when you render, it would be applied. So you see, it's just sort of fading away, and the color that you use, it's totally up to you. So I can choose a different color like red, and you see it's sort of fading within that range, but it's very easy to use. I'll show you how to use it. So you just add a new NPR filter, go to the filter and select paint or fade. Anything that you want really would work. Anything, you know, that would colorize the screen. So paint is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I'm going to set it to 100%. I'm going to use a blue color just so that it's very clear for you guys to see the effect. And the way that you blend this with your render, again, all of these tools here in the NPR filter relate to the passes that you render. So by default, Siri is going to create the shaded pass, the depth of field, the shadow, and the mask. So we're going to use the depth settings here. So these 4 filters. So I'm going to set this one to 0 just to start with the basic. And I'm going to use the depth to sort of push that color. And then you start seeing a little bit more of that. And then you can use the depth exponent to just sharpen that effect, right?
I think this one is a very good one because it literally gives something that it fits pretty much within this theme, you know, steampunk. So having this fogness, you know, like this type of steam going all around the character or whatever shape, I think is going to help quite a lot to read it within the context. It's quite cool.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can use any just like a mist, or you can use even like a color like this and then change the blending mode. Remember, this is very similar to what you had in Photoshop. So you have all this maybe multiplied or screen, maybe just to add a bit more of that lighter color, or multiply if you want to hide it, kind of like it's more dark theme what you're creating. And you can, you know, change the color as you wish. And that's one of the key things I reckon of using these NPR filters in ZBrush, because it's kind of like a non-destructive way to go about it. So you have one filter, you can tweak it as much as you want, and then add the next one on top. So that's another thing that I thought it could be of use. Let me show you the nano mesh, and I think we can wrap it up. Otherwise, if you guys have more questions, we can answer them there. But in terms of the Pokemon nano mesh, what I would think could work is create a base mesh, pretty much like Marlon showed us. I will just use the curved hue brush, for example, and I'll do something like this. Accept that, and then just maybe smooth that.
So one question that we can reply in the meantime. So Ian is asking, how much time do you recommend to save just for rendering? I think I'm on the same page with Pablo, the way he was timing himself. I will recommend you to make sure that you time yourself to finalize the whole thing in 2 hours, not 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. The final hour is literally just for everything else: rendering, mistakes, crashes, etc. So it's very important to make sure that don't time yourself for 3 hours, but just do it for 2 hours for real. That's super relevant.
Yeah. Just and give yourself a buffer. Like don't think about the time that you have for the sculpt to be 3 hours. Just think that you have 2 hours and a half tops. So you will always have that buffer for any inconvenience that might happen. Yeah. All right. So I'll just do a simple sphere, like a cloudy thing, like Marlon did. So this one would be pretty cool, I hope. So let's do a quick UVs for this guy, UV map. So it's a combination of what I showed you and what Marlon showed you. So I'm gonna fill this with black color, then, sorry, not the material, fill with color, and then just paint this kind of like a cloudy thing, not the entire sphere, just like the top bit.
Oh, okay, I see where you're getting. Nice, yeah, very smart. You're full of ideas, Pablo.
That's what that's what it's all about, right? You give me some ideas, and then I build upon that, and then I stole your ideas, and
and then we end up building.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Or like we're supposed to be talking about the Sculpt-off, and then we're done building Pokemons. Like the whole thing is just it's a randomizer, you know?
Yeah, it's a randomized thing. Yeah, so this is the same thing basically. I would just go ahead and do a. Where are we? So create from polypin, what I just showed you guys. So same thing, same idea, but this time I'm gonna do an insert brush. So brush, click on insert brush, click new. I should have actually optimized the amount of polygons, but Hopefully it's not going to crash. So now that I created an IMM brush, in fact, let's just, let's just go with that.
Let's go for the crash.
Let's go for the crash. Create a nanomesh brush. So now we have a nanomesh brush. Let's go back to this thing that we have. In order to preserve that texture, we actually need some, let's split this mask. So we have it in a separate place. We actually need to have UVs. So I'm gonna do again a quick UV for that piece. That's it. So now we have these UVs and we can go to texture and select the one that we built. Oh, let's go back to this thing, sorry. The nanomesh, the one with the texture, and I'm gonna clone the texture so that it appears in the texture palette so we can grab it from whatever we want to. So now if we go to this guy here, we can select that texture. Obviously it's not gonna be mapped in the same way, but now we can use polygroup all. So I'm just hovering over the face, pressing a spacebar, selecting obviously the nanomesh that I created from that sphere with the texture and the polygroup all, and I can click and drag. And now I have these spheres going everywhere, and I can control the nanomesh, the size of and all of that. So if we go to nanomesh here, I can just go to fit or fill, whatever prop you want, scale, and I can randomize the certain things like the scale of all of these bits, just to create a more random thing. And also the rotation, I will randomize that as well. So ideally what would happen is that once I go to the texture and do the same thing of transparency, this will create the effect of some sort of cloud, but I think I would have to actually apply this as the nanomesh. So let's go to inventory, one to mesh. There we go. So it's just a bunch of spheres interacting with each other that have a bit of poly paint, all thanks to nanomesh, and you can keep destroying and moving these things. So by the way, because there are different objects, you can use the move topological brush, move topological, so you can move these pieces, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and just get these things away.
And then you create the surface. That's cool. So we have one question here.
Yeah, go for it.
Can we create the cloud effect in Photoshop straight on the matcap? You know what I mean? So using
sure.
I don't think so neither. Because the matcap is going to create that cloud effect pretty much all around the material, but it's still going to retain the volume. So
you mean like, right. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think what you can create is kind of like a velvet effect. So you can paint that sphere and that have that border around as a kind of like a velvety thing, and that would work.
Yeah.
But ZBrush comes with a few of those like similar things. I wouldn't rely on matcaps, to be honest, to get like a perfect render. Just think about the materials that you want to create and build some of those to apply to the different, to create different materials within the render. But ultimately, what I would use the materials for is just to apply them to different subtools. I wouldn't paint the material on certain areas. So I would just, like, if I have a belt buckle, I will apply a material of metal to the buckle, and the belt would be a material of leather, but they will be separate objects, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. Yeah. So, alrighty.
Anyone else have any other questions?
No, it looks like the chat is already. I think we replied all the questions. So, guys, I think we kind of went through the best we could to kind of help you for the challenge. I mean, we know that it's going to be a lot of pressure for you guys, and I think you even don't have so much time as we had even to prepare. So yeah, all the luck in the world. We're going to be here also helping you, so feel free to email us if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
any more questions?
I'm pretty sure you guys know like what I do as well as Marlon. Like we always like share stuff to try to help you guys as well with these sort of things. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. Hopefully, like Marlon said, it's been helpful. I hope we can do more of these type of webinars in the future. There's a lot of knowledge that Marlon can share with us, and we can pick his brain in many different things. So we'll definitely try to do that in the future.
Someone is asking if it's going to be recorded. Yes, I'm recording the whole thing, so we will be sending you to all of you the records. No worries.
Yep. I think I'm also recording, so I don't know if we don't want to keep rolling out, but
I mean, I have recording here. Otherwise, it's fine. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.
Good luck on Saturday. All right, guys.
Good luck. Good luck.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.